Hey there, welcome to Frederick Uncut. I'm your host, Colin McQuire, and for episode 14, I spent some time with Jennifer Doherty, who's running for mayor. Joining us in our conversation is News Post City reporter Mallory Panuska. Okay, we're here with Jennifer Doherty. Jennifer Doherty is one of my favorite people in the world because we sat and talked for a long, long time about the Downtown Frederick Partnership for a story that never ran. But speaking of running, you're running for mayor now, correct?
I am. I'm running for mayor again.
Again, and again, and again, and again. We're going to get to that. We're also here with Mallory. Would you like to say hello?
Hi.
Okay.
Hello.
I'm interested in going back to the start. I don't know too much about you beyond the fact that you were once mayor and you own one of my favorite restaurants downtown, which we will talk about as well. But have you always lived in Frederick?
I have not.
No.
I grew up in Washington, D.C. I was actually born in Alexandria, Virginia. For those of you who are stalking me, you know I was born in Alexandria. Hey, trust me, it's a little cottage industry in Frederick. What is she doing here? But I graduated from Mount St. Mary's in 1983, moved back to Washington to learn my trade in the restaurant business, came back to Frederick in 1987. It wasn't part of my deep, dark plan to take over Frederick, but I did move back here in 87 because I found a restaurant that was for sale, and I could afford to buy it.
Did you always want to do a restaurant?
Sometime through college, I decided that's what I wanted to do. I have a history degree, so it doesn't make any sense from that perspective other than you get to relive every day, but a little differently.
Aha, it's like Groundhog Day, but not.
But not.
So what are you doing with that history degree exactly?
Well, I get to read a lot, and I get to live and learn. One of my college professors cut out a quotation I had in the Frederick News Post way back when I became mayor in 2002. Ooh. And yes, I know. I still card people that are just barely there. And the idea that with a history degree, you live and learn and read and study. And if you think you have a better idea, you can bring it to the table. In Frederick, that's one of the unique things you can do as a small business owner. You can bring ideas to the table. I am not shy about my thoughts, and I think we have a fantastic place to live, and I think we have so much untapped potential. I want to bring some good ideas to the table.
Good ideas. Do they include that killer quesadilla you guys serve at Pagoo's?
Quesadillas for everyone. Yeah, it's a replay on FDR, a chicken in every pot, right?
Yeah,
I actually do have an idea that is a redo on FDR's Civilian Conservation Corps, and if you play along with me, it's this idea is actually something for young people, and it takes what we have in the watershed and identifies a target project identifying two new employees to the city. They would be contractual employees, recent college graduates with degrees in environmental science or the appropriate landscape architecture sort of thing. We have 8,000 acres just about in the watershed, and the city doesn't do enough to protect it. The idea would be to bring back two people with degrees who live in the city, give them a small salary, and have them under contract for 2 years. But in addition to the small salary, the city would pay off some of their college debt. The idea for the first two employees would be to come up with a land management plan for the watershed, work on the paths, work on what other things need to be done to make the watershed protected and a recreational area that's safe for people to use. The second year, two more people come in, they learn the plan, they started bringing in partners. Something like is being done in some portions of the watershed right now. Boy Scout groups, trail groups, recreational groups, so that we have buy-in from the community. So after the second year, the first two employees have something on their resume, they've earned a little bit of salary, they've paid off a little bit of college debt, and the next 2 years, two others come in. And this can work in a way that we can get a project done, but we don't end up with a forever employee for a project that might not be on the books forever.
Forever, yeah.
And if this theme works, you can do it in the rec department. You could even do it at the golf course, for goodness sakes. I mean, there's lots of places to do it.
Where did you come up with that? Because you launched into that quickly.
Well, it's something that I do. I mean, I think about these things. I think about the way government works. I think that 12 years ago, 13 years ago, when I was running City Hall, we did things a certain way. We were listening to what residents were talking about, so we built the one-stop shop in the parking structure that's on Patrick Street.
Mm-hmm.
So you could go in one morning and get your permit going stop to stop to stop. Each department would take care of it. Well, that was a good idea then, but what now? So I try to look at government, and that's, I think, the benefit of looking at me as a good candidate. I look at the way we do things now and say, okay, that was okay then, but things have evolved. I mean, you do most of the things on your phone, in your handheld device. I'm a little older, so I don't, but I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind being able to do my patio renewal for Magoo's online and just go in to pick it up, or having them mail it to me rather than go into One Stop Shop, because it's not anything new. It's the same thing every year. Mm-hmm. This also might encourage compliance. So it's a goofy thing that you get. It's a virus. I tell people running for office and being in love with politics, it's a virus. You can't get rid of it. So that's how my brain thinks.
It's a virus. I like that idea. Mallory, do you have anything you would like to ask? I mean, we've already had one other candidate in, so I'm assuming that there are issues you'd like to hit on.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go into the issues right now, if you want to
Sure.
jump into that. I know one, and you mentioned this while we were talking the other day, to the downtown hotel. I know you had said that you didn't think that it was moving the way it should. And I guess, can you kind of explain, what you meant by that and kind of what you would do differently?
Sure, absolutely. I can say up front that I support the idea of a downtown hotel, and I want it to be a private entity. I don't think the city government should be in the restaurant business. I don't think it should be in the hotel business. The city has made a decision in the past to be in the parking business, so that can be some other discussion. But what's happened now is the city has gotten involved in this in such a way that it's gotten really complicated. Now it's part of the land deal. We need money from the stadium authority. The state has to support it. And it really does seem like we've ignored some of the key constituencies. First of all, we live in a historic city that has a district that needs to protect that is called to protect the resources. The city of Frederick has an overlay district on Carroll Creek that says every property that goes through in development is going to have Historic Preservation Commission approval. And I embrace that. I think that's good. I think that makes our downtown special. But we've gotten this project particularly so complicated that I'm not sure we're doing it justice. And the private hotel developers are certainly on hold, and in business, time is money, so they don't probably know what's going to happen. By the time we air this, I'm sure some other thing might have changed in Annapolis, but by the time this election takes place, that hotel will not be built. And my job, if I'm elected, will be to make sure that when we get a hotel project, that we work through the legal process, that's planning commission, historic preservation, to make sure that they can follow a timeline. The private developers can follow a timeline with the city permits and planning commissions and preservation to make sure that it fits into our downtown. Now, I have said many times, and this won't be a secret, that I do not support putting city money into these projects. I really think it's imperative that we talk about what we're doing with city money. And while I am a Democrat, I'm also a business person, and I think it's important that we understand that. We do not have money to spare. This will be a job generator, and this is something that the business community does see as important. Heck, it'll help all the restaurants in downtown too. Obviously, the closer you are to the hotel, the more important it will be to you. But the idea that we are going to build a lot of this infrastructure on city taxpayers is a big concern to me. So I think we have to look very, very hard at this. And if I'm elected, I'll go back to the model. And if I'm elected and we're still in this purgatory for a good Catholic, this zone that. Catholics don't believe in purgatory anymore. Okay, I get it. I grew up with that. So we're in this zone of unknowing. Well, if I'm elected, we'll do what we did with Carroll Creek Task Force. And when I came to office, one of the things I ran on in 2001 and taking office in 2002 is to say, we've waited long enough. We want to make this happen. I put a task force together, and it wasn't like I was reinventing the wheel. I took the people that were on Ron Young's original task force, added a few people, and made sure that they knew we were going to build this first phase of Carroll Creek, and we did that in 4 years. So you have to have a city administration that is committed to the project and has the elbow grease to make it happen, bringing the people involved, making sure the city has the budget set aside for the important parts of it. That, to me, is what this administration has been lacking on so many issues. And it's not just the mayor. The aldermen haven't stood up in the budget hearings to say we need to put the money into these projects. And if you're not going to lead, you should just get out of the way.
You said something that kind of had it lit a fire in my tiny little brain, because you said that you don't think that the city should own, for instance, restaurants. And what happens if you get elected? Do you get out of like, how does that work?
Well, the city wouldn't own
I
my
know
restaurant.
I know that the city wouldn't own your restaurant, but in terms of time, because running a restaurant is 18-hour day every day.
Right. Well, the truth is, people have seen it. They know what I did. They worked that I was at City Hall first in the morning and was there very late in the evening. Even my stalker would notice that my car was parked there.
You keep going back to the stalker, man.
Everybody has one. Come
I
on.
don't know.
Anyway, I would work full time for the city. There's no question about it.
Okay.
My imaginary succession plan at my restaurant is in place already.
Oh.
And so if if I'm lucky enough, the Magoo's people can be happy. It'll still stay there. But I had a restaurant before, and I worked full time at City Hall and went in the evenings and sometimes on the weekends. So you needn't worry. But I also think, that the city of Frederick never invested in Jennifer's restaurant. I didn't bring meetings there. There was no conflict. There was no street paving project that would benefit me. In fact, we delayed a street repaving project at one point because we had to juggle the needs of the budget. And I said, look, if we do it in front of Jennifer's restaurant right now, we are going to pay a political price. So let's go ahead and do another street, which was, I guess, Dill Avenue at that time, instead of Patrick Street, that section of Patrick Street. I just didn't think it would be fair. Even though it was on the schedule, I didn't want to look like I was personally benefiting. And in fact, when I was mayor, we were doing meals for the Weinberg Center, and we decided that was inappropriate for us to do that, even though they rotated those meals around. So anybody is free to examine my history in terms of conflict. But the point that I was making is that the city of Frederick should not be involved in buying properties and then picking and choosing losers, is the phrase in Washington, to make sure that we're going to build a parking structure right next to the hotel. All right, well, that's not picking and choosing losers. That's identifying a need, and the city has always built the parking structures. Now, do you want to have the discussion of should we always own the parking structures? They're expensive. I think that's a worthy debate to have, but that's not what I'm talking about. The city in this situation of the hotel has decided that it would own the land and lease it to the property owner or to the hotel owner. That, to me, is another level of involvement that I didn't think was part of the discussion, certainly not 4 years ago when this current mayor and alderman group were elected.
Where does the sort of hotel issue rank with you priority-wise? If this is this issue number one, issue number two? Well,
economic development overall is a huge issue, and economic development in the downtown is the first part of it. But so the hotel issue is big. But we don't have anything happening on the Golden Mile either. The west end of town is suffering greatly because, again, this administration said Walmart will be the savior of the West End. Well, guess what? Walmart made another investment, and this group was too naive to think that they weren't going to look at other options. And we put all our eggs in one basket, and now the West End, again, is looking just a little more dog-eared, a little more run down. And I think that is the mistake that this administration made by sitting back and hoping for the best. But my issues are economic development, controlling city taxes and working on the budget, and understanding how the city government works.
Did you create, if I remember correctly, the Department of Economic Development?
We did create the Department of Economic Development when I was mayor. We didn't have one. We relied on the Downtown Frederick Partnership, its precursor, which was the Greater Frederick Development Corporation. And I'm really proud of that. A city of our size to not have a formal Department of Economic Development seemed crazy. And Richard and his team have done a very, very good job. But they only work with the leadership that's there. And if their leaders are not, and that's the mayor and aldermen, aren't pushing them to get things done, it won't get done.
Have you stayed connected with the people like Richard, for instance, with you not being in office for the last, I guess it would be
Forever.
Have you stayed in, or do you still have a good relationship with Richard?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. But right now, and certainly when it comes to election time, I don't want to put anyone in an awkward position.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You know, I'm not trying to guide their jobs or put their jobs in jeopardy. And I have no eye on having anyone leave the city if I'm elected. When I came to office in 2002, pretty much everybody stayed. I said I was going to eliminate one of the director's positions, and we morphed that into another position. But I'm not targeting any employees. I think that's a key part of. Even though I know a lot of the people, I don't know everyone. And I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to prove him or herself. We did that. We were lucky. Sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't. But that just makes your work harder.
Well, speaking of economic development, there was a sale over the weekend, correct?
It was actually
Friday.
Well,
Friday?
It was technically like the Monday before, like 2 weeks before, but we found out about it Friday. The Frederick Town Mall sold.
Yeah.
And I mean, you were talking about the Golden Mile. Do you think that that's going to help the Golden Mile? I mean, do you think that now that somebody has that property, do you think that it's going to actually become something?
It can't hurt. Yeah. But the truth is, we don't know yet. We don't know what the new purchasers, the new owners of the Frederick Town Mall want to do with it. One of the things that I had talked about 4 years ago with my independent run for mayor was to try to attract science and technology jobs, or possibly have Frederick Memorial Hospital look at that site as a possible main campus, with the idea of maybe using the old hospital as, say, the maternity ward, the maternity hospital. The idea that a community of our size, the city will be 100,000 in 10 years probably, the county will be over 300,000, that we only have one hospital that is really landlocked will be, to me, a travesty. And so the idea of having the hospital as a anchor in that spot would have been great for jobs, would have been great for transportation, would have been great for other things that are going on in our community. But what is not happening is a discussion of those things. We were hoping for 4 years that Walmart would be the savior, and I don't know if these property owners think that.
You said, yeah, I know we're getting something in the headphones here. You said, you mentioned, you alluded to running 4 years ago, and you came in third, I believe.
I did.
So what has changed? What do you think this time around? How do you think you'll be able to sort of overcome what happened 4 years ago?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the reason I ran 4 years ago as an independent or unaffiliated candidate was because the things I was hearing is that voters were tired of partisan politics on the local level. I believed them. And I went around, and with about a dozen volunteers, we got thousands of signatures, so my name could appear on the ballot as an unaffiliated candidate. So we had a Democrat, Karen Young, who ran in the primary against Galen Claggett, and I think she got 1,200 votes, and we had to get over 1,500 signatures to get on the ballot. So then against Randy as the Republican, Randy McClement, the current mayor. The idea of running as an independent or third-party candidate was a little new, perhaps. Partisan politics, two-party politics still exists. So right after that election, I went back to my home base as being a Democrat. And if you were there during the last year, with presidential politics being on television screens all the time, it's sort of a quasi-headquarters for some. But running as a Democrat, as a business person, is sometimes an oxymoron in Frederick County. Well, Democrats aren't always thought of as being business people, and there's quite a juggling act that you have to perform as a business owner, a small business owner, but as someone who truly believes in some of the foundational limits of government and some of the important things that Democrats believe in. Fairness and fair play are big parts of that. I don't think that's necessarily partisan, but...
What do you think, this is on a much broader scale, we're going to go outside of Frederick for a second at least. It's the state of the Democratic Party as a whole right now. It's got to be, it's especially with all the leadership on a national, federal level, how do you think the Democratic Party kind of rebounds nationally?
I wish. You've got me speechless. That's a first. I don't know.
That's the headline of the podcast.
That might be the headline of the podcast. I think the National Democratic Party needs to have someone who will put several key issues on the table. And that's what I want to talk about as a candidate. I want to talk about economic development. I want to talk about taxes. I want to figure out a way to make young people come back to Frederick for more than just service jobs in restaurants. Although you can pay a mortgage and buy a car with that. Not everybody's going to own a restaurant. Not everybody's going to work in a restaurant for 30 years. So you have to think of how are they going to come and stay. But the National Party relies so much on image and forgot to do the legwork. No one will ever accuse me of not doing the legwork. I've knocked on thousands of doors, so much so that people say, you've been here twice already. I'm down or I'll never be down. And, I can take that. But the National Democratic Party has to do a better job of telling us what they want to do rather than they're just going to be the party of resistance.
Okay, that's fair. Mallory, do you have? I have like all these issues I want to get to, but I want to make sure that you.
One thing I did want to touch on when you were talking to me the other day, was you said you wanted to bring back more transparency, weekly like press briefings. Like, why is that like a big issue for you, I guess?
Well, I think open government is the key to good government, and I think that's what we haven't seen in party politics, all the backroom back scratching, and what we haven't seen certainly in local government. One of the raps against Randy is we don't know what he thinks. I got to say, it's kind of funny when I'm in a grocery store and people say, "Are you still the mayor?" And I say, thank you, no, but I haven't been for a long time, but I'm going to give you a chance. They'll offer that they've always voted for me. And I say, well, I'm going to give you another chance. It's rewarding for me in some ways, but it's upsetting in others that they don't know who the mayor is. And I think for good or for ill, I'm willing to stand up in front of the press any day of the week and answer questions. I think my history with the press shows that, and certainly the headlines and the daily stories that were in the newspapers, the Gazette and the Frederick News Post back during my tenure, proved that even if the headline was bad, I was willing to answer your questions. But it wasn't just me; it was City Hall in general. We had a public information officer who knew how to respond to the press, and our mission was never let a call go unanswered. Never let it be said that City Hall, anyone in City Hall, was unavailable for comment. If you call the Director of Public Works to ask a question about why snow removal was delayed or why snow removal was bad, that person should answer that question. If someone was unwilling to answer a question, they would be asked, not only by Nancy Poss at that time, but me, because my job is not to answer that basic question if it could be answered by the subject matter expert. So for me, we would talk about the daily or the weekly agenda. We'd sit down there on Tuesday mornings, tell you what was coming up on the weekly workshop, tell you what other activities were on the agenda, and talk about major legislation that might be on the Thursday mayor and board meetings. But we'd also get into what was happening in NACS and what we were taking to roundtables. We talked a little bit about the neighborhood advisory councils being established, or the economic development being established. I also created the neighborhood advisory councils, where what I like to say is the residents got their soapbox. But we did that in conjunction with annual roundtables. We would take information to the community. And sometimes things need to be explained, but you can't explain them if you're just in the corner office at City Hall. So that's an important part of it for me. You know that I am responsive. If I don't get your phone call right away, I do call you back.
You've never called me back.
Darn. But I've always come over to your table. But that's the idea, that you can ask me a question on the street, you can ask me a question in email or on the phone, and I'll be there. I don't want it to be where it is only at the Tuesday presser that we would be having these conversations. I want the relationship to be genuine, and I want you to not have to pull teeth to get documents out of the government. And I want to use an example, a current example of the golf course about transparency if we have time.
Go ahead.
Well, a year and a half ago, maybe more, the City Golf Pro was summarily dismissed and later brought up on criminal charges. The course of the investigation proceeded to a court trial, which was delayed 6 times, I think, because documents had not been produced by the city. Now, this isn't just a little bit of transparency. This is a criminal matter that the city brought and didn't supply the documents. Eventually, the case got to court, and you covered it, and the newspaper covered it, and the idea that it took a jury lunchtime to come up with a not guilty verdict was kind of shocking, since city employees came to the conclusion, or came to the testimony without the proper documentation. And then when they were sent back to City Hall to get them on the judge's order, they came back and said, oh yeah, this exonerates the employee. They did not produce the documents. They did not produce evidence in court, and they did not tell the public the truth. Now, the rest of the story is still ongoing, because the person who brought the original information against the golf pro is managing the golf course right now. So who's in charge? Why wasn't the city finance director, who was responsible for producing those documents, and the mayor, who showed up in court to testify, why aren't they being held accountable? I mean, this wasn't a small matter. If you want to get rid of the golf pro or any employee, the city has the right to do that. They have the complete right to do that. But they do not have the right to create criminal charges when there's no criminal wrongdoing, and that they can't prove it and refuse to produce documents that did it. That, to me, is it just makes no sense. Makes no sense.
I want to go over to Hargett Farm for a second, because
Okay.
and I want to read.
Wait, that was a cloud exploding
I
over
know
my head.
that was.
Glad there's not a camera in here.
I want to read from this, from the literature that I'm assuming everybody, have you distributed these talking?
They're on my
Okay.
website, which
So
is
you can go to-
jenniferformayor.com.
You say this administration has had almost 8 years to move forward on this regional park plan. Every option has failed. Even the recent plan, they hired a consult to deliver. I'm not sure.
Consultant.
Oh, consultant. Okay. We simply cannot afford a $98.5 million park on top of an $18 million land cost. The gift of the school site to the county and the infrastructure costs. The best option is a compromise that builds a new school, a great park, and has some private development. How do you plan on going about coming across a compromise?
Well,
Because compromising is hard.
compromising is not that hard. I mean, people say back in my term that I was such a hard-nosed person. I vetoed maybe 3 things in 4 years, and I got unanimous votes on lots of things. Interestingly, I didn't get a unanimous vote on my hire of the chief of police, who ended up serving 10 years with great distinction. But that might have been politics. But here's the Hargett Farm issue. We couldn't afford it when the Holtzinger administration bought it. They bonded it after the fact. They said we couldn't refinance those bonds. They said that for 8 years. They said it for 8 years. $18 million, $1.5 million a year being spent on debt. Land could not be used for anything, could not be leased for anything. In the discussions of that acquisition of the Hargett Farm, the idea was to offer a school site to Frederick County Public Schools, which the city did, and gave it to Frederick County Public Schools for nothing, and was not able to secure a turnabout is fair play, quid pro quo, something for something. They didn't get the agreement that said, you, Frederick County Public Schools, will build a larger gym that the city could use for their after-hour activities, including the police activity leagues or some other rec leagues, that is very beneficial to the community. Frederick County Public Schools didn't agree to that, and about 2 months ago, still won't agree to that without the city forking over more money. So the city is essentially the developer of the site, and city taxpayers are asking to be paying twice for that development, which really sticks in my craw. The remainder of the site, let's say 3/4 of it, would be used for park development, as this Board of Aldermen and Mayor have described. They spent $252,000 to get a plan to come up with this $98.5 million project. During the original presentation of that $98.5 million project, which has a water park and multiple sports fields, lighted sports fields, it said, if you build this, you will lose $500,000 a year. You will lose $500,000 a year. So not only are we paying $98.5 million, we'll lose $500,000. And I know Alderman O'Connor said, well, we can work with that. And frankly, I think that is one of the more irresponsible statements any elected officials has ever said. Parks are not supposed to make money. I get that. But you're not drawing this one as a normal neighborhood park. This is a commercial center. This is not supposed to lose money. This is not going to be a burden on taxpayers that we cannot afford. So the idea would be to parcel off a decent amount of space for multiple sports fields, but not a sports field complex and a aquatic center that will impact the neighborhood so adversely with traffic, noise, and light that we cannot hear anything but the phone calls ringing from Butterfly Lane residents who are saying, this is craziness. Why did you guys do this? So divide it up. Again, you have a park with multiple sports fields, and then go back to the original plan that started before I was mayor that had residential development there. When I was mayor, the developer that was going through the process has, I think, 600 residential units there. That would have been $1 million in taxes to the city every year forever.
Forever.
Well, until you raise taxes, then it would be $1.1 million. So, but the $1 million a year of lost revenue, plus the water and sewer impact fees, plus the water and sewer fees to operate the system, those have had direct impacts on how we planned our budgets and how we plan our community. So break it off, decide what makes sense with the layout of the land for private property developer. And I think the logical thing is to go back to that developer. If the land is still under that contract, he has the right of first refusal. I don't know if he's still interested in it or not, but probably not, because he made a really good deal selling land to the city.
Mallory, anything on Hargett Farm? I know this is a very polarizing issue.
I know. I mean, the alderman just recently approved the plan, the $98.5 million. Apparently it's a little less.
Well, what they did was
specific.
But it's the same people who produced the plan. It's the same plan. They just erased the numbers. I mean, and that's transparency. We know what you did. You sent it back for 2 weeks, so we're going to do this in phases. Of course you're going to do it in phases. We still don't have $98.5 million, and we know that number goes up. So for the sake of rounding, it's a $100 million project, because you still have the $18.5 million plus interest that you're paying to acquire the land. You know, it's just, the city is not in the business of building recreational parks, and when we don't do everything else. So if you think of, over the last 12 years, what $1.5 million would have given you, it could have given you a tax break, could have given you a tax refund, it could have given you more police officers to deal with the gang issue, the heroin issue, the homelessness issue. It could have given opportunities for code enforcement to address Asiana or 56 South Market Street or 300 North Market Street, the 3 buildings within 2 blocks of City Hall that are condemned. I mean, it could have given you lots of opportunities. But the idea that we are willing to put so much aside with a bad management plan, it just seems illogical to me. And I know some members of the board are very, very in love with this idea. I love parks. I'm a kid who grew up playing sports in D.C. Our local playground had sports leagues all the time. And from my powder puff football days to my high school and college days of playing sports, I love sports. I love athletics. I know what it does for kids, but I also know that it has to be a fair project that we can afford. And it is a false deal. It is a false promise to say that we can afford $100 million. It can't be done.
You are I think it's fair to say you are a polarizing figure on some level within the town. I really appreciate that. I really like polarizing figures a lot, a real lot. But what do you think is the most common misconception about you from people who, because I know we've had conversations before, and I've talked to people who have been particularly cutting in their words about you. What do you think is the most common misperception?
Well, I would say that the cottage industry that is hatejennifer.com is they have to get over it. Number one, they can say things, and we talked about this during the interview. I don't read the online comments, so if you're thinking that I'm going to read them and it's going to hurt my feelings, it won't.
Does anything hurt your feelings?
Sure, but I have to know you for it to hurt my feelings.
Okay.
You know, if a family or friend says, you know, you're a jerk on this, then I probably was. But the idea that some person writing an anonymous comment on a website is going to hurt my feelings, it doesn't. Yes. So have fun. The idea that that I'm not a nice person is an interesting way to categorize it. When I lost in 2005, a person put out a series of bumper stickers that said "Ding Dong," meaning "Ding Dong, the witch is dead."
Oh, okay.
And it's funny because The Wizard of Oz is one of my favorite movies.
It's ironic.
And I laughed, and then I thought, well, that's immature. Why are they doing that? Because that is what a group of people want to believe. And what they don't know is what they don't know. And that's not the... Why would I do this if this was just an effort to end up being an effort to run my head into a brick wall or to have people pick on me? I mean, that would really be masochism, right? But it's not that. It's the people in the grocery store who say, "I like the way you stood up for us." And that, to me, there's a line. Is it a woman thing? Is it a bossy person thing? I am my own boss. I've run my own business since 1987. So I understand the challenges that come with making decisions, and being the boss means sometimes you're going to make people unhappy. The overall goal is make sure you still have customers coming in, or make sure your customers are generally happy. If you make a mistake, own up to it and move on. And I've tried to do that in my life, in my work, and even in politics. So if the cottage industry that wants to pick on me as something that rhymes with witch...
This is a family podcast.
I know, but the witch died under a house. So the idea is maybe I'm Glinda.
You're Glinda? You're Glinda? What do you think? You're talking about making mistakes and owning up to them. What do you think? You were mayor once. What was your first time through? What was your biggest failure in that stint? And what was also, do you feel, your greatest accomplishment?
Well, my biggest failure was probably in how I dealt with and managed the Weinberg Center. At that time,
that's interesting.
Yeah, well, the Weinberg Center was bleeding money, and the leadership was all over the place, and we were trying to fix it, and I was definitely interested in fixing it, but maybe too fast.
Did you bring John in?
No.
Okay.
No. It was really...
Was that after you?
After.
John? Okay.
And the path that we took is ultimately the right one. And I commend John for putting a good plan in place. But it was just hemorrhaging money. It was producing everything and taking all the risks rather than just booking agents and being a venue. So now it's a I won't say profitable yet, but it's a good medium. And I think the team at the Weinberg Center and the arts community has really paid attention to the fact that it can't just be an unlimited checkbook for the arts.
So that's what it was. Did you think you wasted too much money on it when you were in office?
I think I wasted too much energy saying you're wasting too much money.
Okay.
And we didn't, it was important. I didn't think we had the right team in place at the time. And it ended up, there are so many interested parties. And again, having more than one group managing the operation, it wasn't exactly effective in terms of the city. And then, once you start stepping on toes, everybody feels like their shoes are in the way. So that was a tough one. And I'm really glad the Weinberg has evolved. And I think the fights, I'm proud that we turned it in the right direction. I'm sorry it took so much heartache to do it.
And what was your greatest accomplishment?
Well, Gosh, I think it's the neighborhood advisory councils, because that's a legacy issue where residents have a formal way to put their 2 cents forward. And I think that makes a difference. We need to make sure that it's not just the police department that is hearing from the NACs, and we need to make sure that City Hall, the mayor's office, gets the message on not just speeding and graffiti, but where do we want to see the city go? And that's why, having an annual, my idea of having an annual conference of the historic preservation, planning, zoning, my suggested code enforcement board, the NACs, and the mayor and board is another effort at transparency, but also another way to make the NACs work. Well, here's what we want to do, says the mayor and board. What do you want to do? And that helps guide legislation, helps control the budget, helps make sure the capital budget is prioritized in a good way. So that, to me, is a practical way to take the things that are in place and give it more momentum.
I think we might be running short on time. Okay, so what I want to do before, because we always end with fun stuff. So I hope you're ready for fun stuff. But before we get there, I want to make sure, Mallory, is there anything that you've left out that you want to know about that the people need to hear Jennifer Doherty talk about?
I don't think so. I think she pretty much touched on most
got
everything.
Everything?
Yeah.
You've got everything? I want to talk about these. You have some wild ideas like drive-through voting.
Why not?
That's
we have
fun.
horrible
You could
voter
get a
turnout.
Big Mac Jr. and you can vote.
Why not?
That'd be fabulous.
Why not?
That would be fantastic. And then this idea too, real quickly, putting kiosks on Carroll Creek for police.
4 years ago, I did suggest this because we do have a number of issues sort of clashing heads on Carroll Creek. One of them is we need to make sure that there is a continued police presence. There's so much invested in there, and it's off the traditional paths. Now, I know the police officers are there walking the beat and on the Segway and on the bicycles, but I think having a gathering point would also be helpful for tourists who are coming to town and don't know that our police officers are on Segways or on bicycles and don't know where to look. This could also be used by the Downtown Partnership, even tourism when there's an activity day. If we go back to these huge activity days, not just for Saturdays, where people are coming into town, maybe we could bring back My Express shuttle from the olden days.
You got a shuttle?
We did.
There was
Isn't
a
that
shuttle
crazy?
in Frederick?
We had a free downtown shuttle where people could park at Harry Grove Stadium for free,
Wow.
jump on the shuttle and come downtown. It was designed to get city and county employees out of the parking decks where the spaces were so expensive and run downtown for nothing. And it would run all day. It wasn't just in rush hour. But it would really be something that we can bring back, and not just at Harry Grove Stadium, but probably on the West End, since there's a lot of parking at Frederick Town Mall. Maybe use that for a while, too. But those are some of the ideas to bring people downtown, make it easy for them, but having that kiosk there to keep an eye on the creek and an eye on Market Street. That's the hub of our downtown. That's when people come into town. So don't we want to make it the best we can possibly make it? That's what I think.
One more thing on politics. The current administration, Mayor McClement, what do you think has been his greatest achievement while in office?
I'm glad he finished phase 2 of the creek after 8 years in office.
Where are we on this? Is there going to be like a phase 8, phase 12? Like what is, and especially if you're elected too, do you have ideas for phases?
Never have end of ideas. Always have ideas. If you're out of ideas, you're dead.
You're going to extend the creek to Thurmont?
No. But we do have, the next opportunity is on the south side of the, by Allegheny Power, Potomac Edison. That stretch down through town, we still need to make sure that is completed. I know people in friends of Baker Park and the people who've worked on Color Lake want ice skating on Color Lake, but we really should talk about my ice rink idea.
What, do you want to have an ice rink?
Of course, who doesn't want an ice rink?
Where would you put the ice rink?
Well, where's the hotel going to end up? Who knows? But the hotel and downtown activities, bring the young people in. You could bring back the skate park idea for winter, and in the summertime they could do their roller rink like they do in New York. But this is something that is perfect for downtown, where the kids can go and have fun, old people could go and have fun, but it's a recreational opportunity. where you might actually have people enjoy downtown, not just eating and drinking, because it can't just be about eating and drinking.
It's
and
so
shopping.
odd to hear you talk about you don't want people to eat and drink. You want a bar.
No, it's not just that, because it's you don't want it to be the Yogi Berra syndrome where people don't go there anymore because it's too crowded. Well, it's more than just having bars and restaurants, and we have fantastic bars and restaurants. We have great retail shops, but we have to have something else that excites people. What excites them on Fire and Ice for Saturday? Ice sculptures.
Fire.
Oh, I thought it was ice.
No, you're right.
But anyway, I think there are opportunities to have recreational opportunities. And those who are saying, oh, but it's different. It's the Hargett Farm. It's downtown. It is something different. It is something manageable. It is something that's not a $100 million project. Mm-hmm. So these ideas that can happen in a shorter period of time, maybe it's where you do with the Brickworks, with their future development. Maybe it's on one of the sites that exists along the creek right now. There are opportunities there, and I'd like to tap them.
Do you think we could better utilize the band shell?
We can better utilize almost everything in the city. Yes, of course we can.
I've always wondered that.
And I'll say with the asterisk that I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Carroll Creek, and it was our creek, our Carroll Creek project, our project from Rotary that made the vast improvements to the band shell. But that's not just the only thing. There's so many opportunities downtown. Should we maybe have a mayor and board meeting at the band shell once in a while?
That would be fun. You have
give them overripe fruit.
you have the seats though. People could.
Yeah, I bet we'd fill the seats.
Fill the seats. Okay, so we always finish everything up with fun questions.
Wasn't that fun?
That was very fun.
Okay,
I want to talk about police kiosks more, and farms and $98.5 million. But we like to ask a series of sort of quick hit questions. 5 words or less when it comes to answers.
Okay.
That's what we're hoping for. We usually never stick to this rule, but that's how we set it up. Mallory, if you have any fun things you'd like to ask, then I would suggest you chime in at some point. I would probably ask you if you have anything.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Ready.
What's your favorite book?
Good one.
That's 2 words.
Do I have a few left?
Yes.
I don't know.
You can't say that. I know you read.
I do. I read goofy things like Michelle Rhee's book on education.
Well,
I'm actually reading 1984 right now.
Isn't that the thing?
Oh
That's
my
what everybody's
gosh.
doing.
Well, 2 summers ago I read It Can't Happen Here, and I gave it away. And I can't remember who I gave my copy to. So if you have my copy of It Can't Happen Here, can you bring it back?
I don't have it, but if I find it, I'll bring it back. So you don't have a favorite book?
No. I gotta say, I'm sorry. I'm a weak link on that.
That's
It
so
is
sad.
kind of funny. I'm usually when I travel, I'll read that goofy thing, that Maeve Binchy book, because I go to Ireland a lot. So I'll read a Maeve Binchy, and then I'll read some wonky book that's kind of boring.
Outside of Magoo's, I ask everybody this. Nobody wants to give me an answer. Graham knows where I'm going with this. Outside of Magoo's, where is your favorite place to eat in Frederick? What's the best meal?
Hunan Gourmet on 7th Street.
Oh, okay. Hunan. I think I've been there.
Oh, they're delicious.
Hunan. Good? They're good?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Mallory, do you have anything?
That was the one I was going to ask.
Oh. Okay, so we'll keep pushing forward. Favorite movie?
It's a Wonderful Life.
Really?
Really?
Least favorite movie?
What's
People
that
never
one?
think about
the
that.
Titanic.
The Titanic. You're
Oh.
going on record saying you hate the Titanic.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's like
that's
saying you
terrible.
hate Care Bears.
No, it's not. I hated Titanic. It was, oh my gosh, it was horrible. I thought, when is this going to end? Where's that iceberg?
Well, we all knew the ending of the story. We knew how that was going to end anyway. Coke or Pepsi?
Can I say Tab?
Tab. That's a first Tab. That's the
I
first. Do you still drink Tab? Do they sell Tab?
Yes and yes. I actually have a can in the car. I was going to bring it in, but
Where do you find Tab?
Wegmans.
Wegmans. Okay. All right.
They have 12 packs now.
Beer or wine?
Oh, beer.
Beer. Favorite beer?
Guinness.
Yeah, I should have.
That was
known
easy.
I should have known that. Excluding Ireland, where's your favorite place to travel?
I've been to England.
Oh, you love.
Yeah, you know what you know.
You know, would you ever want to have you not been somewhere you'd really like to go?
Of course. I would like to go lots of places. I do not want to go to Russia.
Oh, You want to make Russia great again? So it's no. Skittles or Starburst?
Starburst.
Favorite television show?
Ooh, right now?
Right now.
The Young Pope was very good.
Did you finish it?
I did. I was quite surprised. I don't know. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm not going to ruin it for people if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, don't ruin
Game
it.
of
Don't
Thrones.
spoil- so you like HBO?
I do. I'm new to HBO.
You're new to HBO?
Yeah, I was a Downton Abbey person. Yeah. I'm public
It took you, what,
television.
30 years? You're new
Ask
to
my
it.
nephew. My nephew lives with me. He's like, yeah, and Jen, this stuff's all on HBO.
Yeah,
I'm
so-
like, oh, that's
you're,
cool.
you're a PBS fan then.
Of course, yeah. Who doesn't like PBS? It's public.
Well, that's.
Do you
that's
give your money?
true.
Yeah, in March you go for Celtic. You go for the Celtic woman. You go for
Yeah.
the river dance.
Do you donate to the?
Of course I do. I go to MPT.
Okay, all right.
I believe they're having a drive right now in case people want to do it. I don't know the number, sorry.
I actually had a question. Do you wear a kilt every day?
That is an awesome question. I do wear a kilt every day, but not at home.
Okay.
Not.
So if
Usually wear
you are
khakis.
elected mayor, are you going to wear a kilt to
I might.
Ooh.
That's a good question. I might. Actually, I didn't used to wear kilts. I used to, at the restaurant, I used to wear just a usual restaurant owner garb. And right after we opened at Magoo's, I was like, yeah, every restaurant person is wearing black pants or tan pants, whatever. And I was like, we're going to do something different. So I got kilts, and obviously I went, well, maybe not obviously, I went to Catholic school, so I wore kilts my whole life in school, and I thought, oh, those were pretty comfortable. So then I started wearing them, and now they're a thing. You know, the astronaut in front of the restaurant wears a kilt. He was a gift from a friend. And how do you make an astronaut fit in an Irish pub? You put a kilt on him. So Major Buzz Magoo and I wear kilts.
I don't have anything nearly as cool as that question.
That was a
but
good
I will
question.
ask you: do you prefer Sheetz or Wawa?
I don't go to either.
You
very
don't? Do you ever
often.
get gas anywhere?
I go to Get Go, of course.
Oh, so you're a Giant Eagle person? No.
I do go to Giant
you
Eagle.
go to Giant Eagle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Roz is my checker. Yeah, she's
All
awesome.
right. You have your own personal. That's
This
so
is
good.
Frederick, man.
This
Don't
is
you know
so
your
good.
checker?
This is so good. Okay, and then finally, I know we all know which side of the aisle you're on, so this is going to be a tough question, probably for you. The best thing about Donald Trump.
The best thing about Donald Trump is he is. I am trying so hard.
You got to give me something.
He is living up to that Jersey Shore line, which was the oranger, the better.
That's the best thing about him. The oranger, the better.
Look, seriously, Donald Trump. I don't see eye to eye with Donald Trump on anything that I can think of right now. And the mayor of the city of Frederick is not about to be in a fist fight with Donald Trump, but he does not respect people. And we've had fun in the last few minutes, but he does not respect people who don't agree with him. He does not respect people who are not like him. And he might be a person who has some good ideas, but they're so distorted by the hate, and I really don't like that.
Wow. Well, that's a very upbeat way to end this podcast.
Sorry.
That's great. Jennifer Doherty, thank you so much.
Thank you
for
very
coming
much.
in. Mallory, thank you.
Thank you.
And goodbye, everybody. The Frederick Uncut podcast is produced by Graham Cullen, Chris Sands, and me. A special shout out goes to Kelsey Luce for writing and performing our theme. We want to thank our guest this week, Jennifer Doherty, as well as Frederick News Post reporter Mallory Panuska for lending her expertise to the conversation. Join us next week when we sit down with another area newsmaker by hitting subscribe on iTunes or Google Play. Thanks for joining us, and remember, this is Frederick, and this is Uncut.